Now, the Kenyan government wants to establish a dedicated intelligence unit to monitor Kenyans online. And here's the catch. The government claims that social media was the main catalyst behind last year's June and July nationwide protests. These protests saw innocent Kenyans lose their lives due to police brutality. Prezona claimed that this national outcry left a stain on our country's reputation. And for that, anataka kucontrol this situation aje by forming a digital intelligence unit to monitor Kenyans online. Basically, unaweza ita stage ya social media. Kazi yake itakuwa number 1, track social media activity. 2, deploy advanced surveillance technology. And lastly, introduce legal framework for digital policing. Tuelewane kitu moja. Every single Kenyan has a legal right to access public information. Over time, social media has proven to be a very important tool in our day-to-day lives. For example, during last year's protests, police were using excessive force. Social media really come through for Kenyans. Why? Because it helped us unmask this unlawful behavior. Putting measures on social media, especially at this time when elections are just around the corner, brings out a lot of suspicion. Like why? You can clearly see that this is not about protecting lives or property. This is about sabotaging our freedom of expression. Siku nitaona gava imeform intelligence units to monitor corruption and our failing systems. Iyo siku nitanais mbaya. Fellow Kenyans, you better unite and say no to this type of oppression. Otherwise, Uganda ilianza tu hivi. Repost this video so that it can reach as many Kenyans as possible.
This one should be rejected by Kenyans. After telling you to go and watch that series called Bodyguard, for Kenya, ndio hii sasa. New police unit to spy on you online. Reject this. With all blood, sweat and bone marrow, reject this nonsense. Meanwhile, these guys need to pay us, man. I remember our life. After kuongelea about the diary of a wimpy kid, here it is. I didn't know it's a series. So we'll continue doing this. This is a nice thing. Waleti hapa hivi prisoners of geography. They need to bring here prisoners of geography. Meanwhile, Kenyans don't allow this. Amen.
So the government of Kenya is planning to introduce a new police service unit. And this police service unit is mainly going to do oversight on the Kenyan online platforms or in the Kenyan social media platform. The Kenyan government already have over 5 police units. We have the GSU, we have the NIS, we have the DCI, we have the administration police and more. So this move has bring a lot of backlash, mostly from the critics and from Kenyans themselves. But why? Kenyans feel that this new police unit is going to limit their freedom of expression in the internet. And also remember that a number of Kenyans or a lot of allegations have been made on the Kenyan current police units. Example, in what happened in 2024 and what happened in 2025, a lot of arrests and a lot of abductions happened. And these allegations were mainly put on the Kenyan police units. Remember also that this arrest happened online. Now Kenyans are wary or Kenyans are in worry that when this new police unit is introduced, the freedom of expression, the online abductions, the online shutdowns on the internet shutdown is going to be rampant. And also remember that Kenya is at the most crucial moment. Kenya is at the election campaigns period. What do you think is the essence of this new police unit that is about to be introduced to the Kenyans?
The president ameona sasa atengeneze another unit ya polisi ya kuweza kuangalia pale online na social media. Mkifanya makosa yote, mnashikwa all the way from Homa Bay Central Police Station, Ukuta, here and there. Then alafu. So kitu William Ruto amefanya, amehalalisha ile squad, ilikuwa the abduction squad. Ameihalalisha sasa, ameiweka ikakuwa constitutional. Let me tell you, my guys, na mnisikize vizuri hapa. We won't be cowed. We will always speak out. We will always tell Kenyans the truth. Walijaribu kutuuzia woga na cyberbullying, sijui cyber crime bill, ikakuwa haiwezi. Wakaleta cyber crime law, ikakuwa koti imesimamisha. Sasa through the back door, ameleta at watchdogs on our social media platforms. Let me tell you, Mr. President, we won't go silent. We'll always tell you the truth. We'll always speak. Sababu the truth will always set us free. Hatutanyamaza na hatutanyamaza. At this time, we are not fighting for anyone. Not Gachagua, not Matiang'i, not Kalonzo. It's our time to fight for our own space. The youth space must be respected. There is nothing for us without us. So if you set those police, just set them, we know they are there. Kitu unafanya tu ni kuwafanya wakue in the constitution, wakue by the law. Let me tell you, ni one term. Hata useme nini, we will always tell Kenyans the truth. Na ni one term. So hatunyamazishi na hatutanyamaza maovu yakitendeka. Hiyo haitawahi. Haiwezi make Mr. President. Na ni one term. Ni one term.
I think Opreso has an identity crisis. He thinks he's not a dictator, but why would he need to control information? How does he know it will take 5 trillion to make Kenya a first world country when he can't even spend for State House within its budget?
But how do the DCI manage to track your movements and even map your social circles? KTN spoke to a data specialist privy to these operations, but who asked to stay away from the cameras. When properly done within the confines of the law, it starts with a trigger, a crime, a tip-off, or a person of interest, and a valid occurrence book entry made. Investigators must then seek a court order to access subscriber details from mobile service providers. If granted, they are given a call data record or CDR. A call data record contains phone number, SIM card serial number, IMEI of the device used, time and duration of calls, SMS logs and mobile data usage, base transceiver station, numbers contacted and frequency of contact. Using your phone's interaction with nearby mobile towers called base transceiver stations, the officers can triangulate your position. Every time you make a call, send an SMS or use data, your signal bounces off the nearest tower and they can catch you.
Tonight, we reveal a controversial plan buried in President William Ruto's State of Security report to Parliament. 6 months after the Genz protest that left 42 civilians dead and saw more than 1,700 arrests, the government now wants to establish a dedicated digital intelligence unit to monitor Kenyans online. The proposals submitted to Parliament last month would give security agencies new sweeping powers to track social media activity, deploy advanced surveillance technology, and introduce what the report calls legal frameworks for digital policing. With the 2027 elections on the horizon, memories of 2024 and this year's brutal crackdown still fresh, critics warn this could turn Kenya into a digital police state. But the government insists it is simply modernizing security to protect lives and property.
Mid-2025, Kenya's Gen Zs took to the streets in June and July. What was planned to be peaceful protests descended into chaos. The government's own report to Parliament documents the cost. 42 civilians dead, nearly 500 police officers injured, and over 1,700 people arrested. The government says that during last year's protests, 12 police stations were destroyed and 6 firearms stolen.
The events of June and July and the regrettable loss of lives and destruction of property left a stain on our national conscience. Our constitution guarantees every Kenyan the right to express themselves, to assemble, and to participate freely in our democracy. But it also imposes duties and responsibilities on citizens and leaders alike to uphold the rule of law, protect life and property, and safeguard peace and stability. Rights and responsibilities are inseparable.
In the report by President William Ruto, the national government seems to have an answer to prevent such violence in the future, but it's an answer that has rights activists deeply alarmed. According to the National Security Report, the state plans to establish a digital intelligence unit, deploy what it calls modern surveillance technologies, and create new legal frameworks for what it terms as digital policing.
Of course, this is a continued attempt to intimidate and threaten human rights defenders and activists, and we want to communicate very clearly that we will not relent. And these kinds of moves, which we are now seeing across borders, is part of the continued attempts to shrink the civic space in Kenya and East Africa, and we have to remain resolute and resilient against these attempts to silence us.
The report specifically targets what it calls growing abuse of social media platforms and blames these platforms for mobilizing demonstrators and spreading what it terms as misinformation. It proposes suburb-level patrols, rapid response protocols, and enhanced capacity for security bodies to monitor and assess threats early.
Social media has become a very important tool for liberation, for freedom, for human rights, and for justice. And we will continue to use social media to send messages and to create awareness. No individual, no government, no institution will threaten us from engaging the public through social media and to make sure that change comes to East Africa.
The 200-page document offers few details about how the Digital Intelligence Unit would operate, what data it would collect, or who would oversee it. It doesn't specify which relevant bodies would receive enhanced surveillance capacity and what legal protections would prevent abuse. These proposals come as Kenya enters a politically charged period ahead of the 2027 elections. The government report warns of political polarization and what it calls political intolerance. The government says it's also planning human rights training for police and to promote dialogue. But critics say those commitments ring hollow when paired with proposals for digital surveillance without clear oversight. The question now is whether Parliament will demand answers or simply rubber stamp another expansion of state power.